So a few years ago, I created a video to show how you could use the Stream Deck for productivity. And I showed how to integrate with things like OBS and Zoom and, of course, Microsoft Teams. But one of the drawbacks in the integration for Microsoft Teams is that it wasn't a true integration. It was simply using the Stream Deck to execute a keyboard shortcut. And while that worked pretty well when you were in a meeting, if you happened to be in a meeting but weren't actually clicked on the meeting, for instance, if you were multitasking in email or in another application, the keyboard shortcut was no longer really mapped to Teams, but whatever application you were using. And that could create a frustrating experience when you clicked mute, but it didn't really unmute you. Instead, it executed some other keyboard shortcut in a different application. Now, over the years, I've tried a couple different options inside Stream Deck, such as a kind of a multi-process flow where it would, try to switch to the right process and do a delay and then hit the keyboard shortcut, but nothing ever worked really well. However, last week, Microsoft released a native integration for the Stream Deck and Microsoft Teams. So today, I'm going to show you how to get started with that integration and how it works. So the first thing you'll need to do is make sure that you have the Stream Deck software installed on your PC. It's really easy. Just go to elgato.com. In the top right-hand corner, click on Downloads, and then when the download page loads, you'll need to select your product. One thing to note is that there are a lot of different Stream Deck devices, so make sure you click the right software for the type of Stream Deck you have. I just have the regular Stream Deck, so you click Stream Deck and then hit Download and go through the installation steps. Installation is pretty straightforward. Click Next, 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 and then it will install. All right, once the Stream Deck has installed, your software should look something similar to this. You may have more square boxes, you may have less. It just depends on which Stream Deck you have, but this is what the regular Stream Deck software looks like. Some key things here, if you're new to Stream Deck, is you'll have a Stream Deck profile here, and you can add a mobile device, or this is actually the device that's connected, so make sure it's plugged in so it'll detect it, and then you'll have a profile. So here is the device, and then here's the profile. I'm going to first create a new profile. I like to create one depending on, if I'm doing a recording, I might have a profile for recording. If I'm doing work, I might have a work profile. So you have different profiles for different things. So I'm going to go here and just double click and rename this to work. Okay, so now I have a work profile. Okay, the first thing you're going to need to do after you create a profile is install the Teams integration. So if you click this little plus icon up here, you'll see it's spotlighted here. But if you're watching this a year from now, it may not be spotlighted. So just go to plugins and then type in Teams, and you'll see Microsoft Teams here by Microsoft, and click install. All right, and then once it's installed, you can come up here. I already searched for it, but you may not see it initially, so just come into the search and type Teams, and then you can drag and drop one of the icons here. Now, the icon looks weird. I just dragged in mute. You would expect a mute icon. That's because there's a couple things you need to do to get this working. The first thing you'll need to do is you'll need to go into Teams and then go up into the Settings area and click Settings. And in here, you should go to Privacy and scroll all the way to the bottom, and you should see this Manage API option. Now, before I go there, if you do not see that Manage API option, go up to Settings and click Check for Updates. I didn't find this. I was searching around the portal trying to figure out where in the world do I enable this, and it just so happened that my Teams client was out of date. So do that first, and then go to Privacy, Manage API, and yours might be like this where the Enable API is off. Turn it on, and then it'll generate a code, and you can always regenerate a token. Once you regenerate the token, it'll disconnect all of the clients that were using the previous token. Okay, so that's the first thing you'll need to do. So I'm going to go back over to Stream Deck here, and I'm going to plop it into this API tokens area. You only need to do it for one because it'll pick up that setting as you drag in other icons as well. But you'll notice it's still not activated. Why is that? The token is giving me a check mark. It's good to go, but yet the button doesn't really do anything. It's not used. It's because you actually need to be in a Teams meeting for it to do that initial activation. And that was another thing I had to figure out. So if you go back into your Teams client and go to the calendar, just click Meet Now, right, and start a meeting. And then when you get here, I just say don't use audio because you don't want the audio going back and forth and reverbing. And once you click Join, you will notice if you go back into the Stream Deck that it's ready to go. It's live. And so if I was to click this, it would mute and unmute. You can see it actually happening down here in the taskbar. Actually, let me go back into Teams. I'm going to enable my mic. This might be bad. So we'll see what happens. Okay, good. It's not reverbing. Awesome. So if you go in here and click it, you'll see Teams is muting and unmuting. So usually what I like, for me personally, I want the mic first, then I want camera, which camera won't work because I'm using the camera in OBS, so it may not show anything, but you can see it turn the camera on and off. Then I want raise hand, which is something that I would use in like a meeting with a lot of people. We use that a lot at work actually. And then one of the new features is this reaction option, which I love in Teams. And it was not possible to do this using the keyboard shortcuts because there were no keyboard shortcuts for the reactions. The reactions actually show up under a menu of a set of reactions. So unless you do API integration, there's no way to really do this. So the fact that they've brought this in is really a bonus. It's an ad that you couldn't even do before unless you built something custom. So from there, I would use probably like is a common one that I use, and then applause is another one. And you can drag and drop all of these if you wanted to use them or just a couple of them. So that is how you would do the Teams integration, and you can see all of the ones that are available here. It's pretty easy. So now that we've integrated with Teams, let me show you a couple other cool plugins that I use for work. Okay, the other integration I use a lot actually is Philips Hue. I have Hue bulbs or Zigbee-based bulbs that integrate with Philips Hue all throughout my office, and so I use that integration pretty frequently here in Stream Deck. And so let me show you very quickly how I use that. You're going to go back into this plugins area, and once again you can search for Hue. And you'll see that there is a lighting Philips Hue by Elgato. That's the one that I use, and I click install. Now, once that's installed, you can search for Hue, and I personally like to use scenes. So I create scenes in the Philips Hue app or whatever I'm using, and then I drag those scenes in, so that way I have all of the lights rather than using some of the other controls, which are controlling maybe individual lights. So if I drag and drop in scene, you'll see that initially it says no bridges, right? Because I need to get the Stream Deck connected to the Philips Hue bridge in the house. So you can click Add New. It's going to pop up a little window, and you'll say Discover Bridges. And then once it finds the bridge, you can click Pair and then click the button on the Philips Hue bridge. And then it's done, and it will pull in all of the information. Now, if it's not working, I've had this issue before, it's because the Philips Hue and your computer are not on the same network. For instance, my Philips Hue is connected to my, it's not connected to my Wi-Fi network, but it's on the same subnet, I think, as my Wi-Fi network. For whatever reason, I have to be connected to Wi-Fi to talk to it. I need to go through and do a bunch of home networking overhauls, quite honestly. But if that's the issue, just make sure you're on the same network as the Philips Hue bridge. So once that's done, you can go in and find the group. I've created a group for my office, and then you can pick the scene that you want. So in my case, I'm going to select office, and then I'm going to select let's do work soothing. So this is a different scene that I use. Usually I will type in here the name, work soothing, and then I'll make it a little bigger, a little too big there. And then I will center it. And then the nice thing they've added recently is it used to be that you have to kind of build your own icon images or import your own icons, but they now have an icon library that you can use. So I'll go in here and do bulb. And I like to use this one, right? And now it's working. So if you look, let me add one more, and then I'll kind of show you how it works. So I'm going to add one more scene here, choose office, then like Tokyo, which is what I have now. Go ahead and adjust it again and add the icon. Boom. So now I have two scenes. Usually I have about four or five that I put in here, but just for the demo, I'm going to show you just these two. And then of course you can go over and click, right? If I click this one, you'll see my lights have changed. If I click this one, you'll see it changes back and makes a nice transition. So that's really convenient. And I will tell you, even on work meetings, when I use that, it's really pops, and people really are like, whoa, how'd you do that? So it's one of my favorite features. I have other scenes in here for when I need it brighter in my office, or when I'm trying trying to relax or when I'm trying to read. So that is a really clutch use of the Stream Deck. So let me show you just one or two more quick things and then we'll wrap up. So there are just two other quick things I'll show you, and there's a lot of things you can do with Stream Deck, but we'd be here all day. But there are two quick things I will show you that I like to use. One is text, right? So here it's just a simple text. You can put in a website or some other text that you have to say all the time, and it will automatically enter that message, right? And so I use this at work, for things that I maybe need to communicate to people repeatedly, such as a program that we're running and we have a website for that program or something else. I'll have this in here. And if I just open Notepad real quick, and if I just push the button, you'll see it drops that text in. So that's a really simple built-in integration. That's not something that you need to go and download. That's just part of the Stream Deck. Now, the other thing that I do is a plugin, and this is for stocks. Let me go in here and we'll put in stocks. And I like to use this one by Bar Raider. And so I'm gonna install that. Okay, and then I'll put in stocks here. And you'll see that it allows you to drag and drop a stock ticker. And I just use this to kind of track stocks that I'm interested in. So Yahoo Finance is fine. You just put in the stock ticker, the refresh rate, and the background, and there it goes. So it just plugs in the Microsoft stock. It's doing great today, which is awesome. You can, obviously, there's lots of different options here. You can change the background. You can do a background image or file. So if you wanted to grab the Microsoft logo, for instance, as the background for this, you can do that. You can name it if you want to. I don't name it. I just like it exactly how it is because it shows just the right amount of information. So those are just two other ones that I really use a lot. There's also integration for things like Zoom. The other video that I did, I believe I showed you how to do Zoom integration as well. And clearly keyboard shortcuts are one that you can really use. They're very versatile as well. But hopefully you enjoyed that video. Hopefully this showed you how to use the new Teams integration, gave you some ideas of other ways that you can use the Stream Deck for productivity.